I was raised with the Reform Siddur in the UK, which near the end has almost all of Pirke Avot, the ethics of the fathers, or the chapters of our ancestors in it. And when I went to services, which I did every week, I would get quite bored and I would read Pirke Avot. And it's actually what made me a rabbi, I think, because it made me realize that Judaism wasn't just hearing the Torah portion and reading the same prayers every single week. It was actually ethical action and reflection. And I always recommend Pirke Avot to anyone who is looking to go further in depth in Judaism. And there are some quotations from Pirke Avot that seem particularly appropriate at the moment. One is from chapter 1, Mishnah 17. Shimon ben Gamliel says, "All my life I've been raised among the sages and have not found anything better for oneself than silence. Study is not the primary thing, but action. And whoever talks excessively brings about sin." That's quite an extraordinary statement. Study is not the primary thing, but action, because Judaism is so strongly based on study. It's not saying that study isn't important, but it's not the primary thing. You have to take what you learn and go out and implement it in the world. And whoever talks excessively brings about sin. I find that actually really, really relevant. I'd say during COVID, a lot of people felt themselves unable to act, and so especially framed themselves around talking. And I'd say this is especially something in the social media age, where a lot of people share their personal perspectives. This is what I believe, this is what I'm against. And I don't remember who it was who asked, if it weren't for Facebook, if Facebook suddenly disappeared, how many people would no longer be engaged in social action? And that's a really interesting, challenging question, because so many people today talk excessively. And by which I understand this Mishnah to be they talk a good talk, but they don't actually implement it. They fight against other people who oppose their views, and they say, see, I've done something. I've stood up for something in the world. And I've never been much of that. I've never been much of a person for just making statements or signing onto letters that don't change anything, even though I often get asked to sign many different things. If a letter, for example, a communal letter, asks us to plan something together, to implement something, then so long as it's something I agree with, I'll always put my name to it. If a letter asks people to think about things or to reflect on things, it's not really making much of a statement. So for me, the primary thing isn't study, it isn't speech, it's action. And this is similar to Pirke Avot 3:12. Chanina used to say, anyone whose deeds are greater than their wisdom will endure. But anyone whose wisdom is greater than their deeds, their wisdom will not endure. And that's the point. Everybody who knows me knows what I stand for. You just have to come to a sermon, to a Shabbat service and hear my sermons to know what I stand for. But it's not enough to just say things from the bima. It's not enough to just shout things on social media. It's not enough to just say letters saying, this is what we think or we're concerned about. We actually have to do things. We have to make a change. And for me, the rabbinate isn't just about what we stand for, but how we implement it. And I stand for Judaism, so I help lead prayer service. I stand for Jewish ritual, and I stand for many other things as well, including working towards the Messianic age. And I even think of Exodus chapter 24, verse 7, when God calls to the Israelites and they say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we'll do it and we'll hear. Their first pledge is action. It's not to hear, it's to do. Judaism is a doing religion. It's not just a thinky religion. It's not just sitting in yeshiva studying all day. I've lived that life. I lived it for 3 months. And it's very comforting, it's very comfortable, but you don't actually have to change the world at all. And so it becomes sort of reinforcing, self-affirming. Look what we're doing God's work by sitting separated from society and not actually making the world a better place. That's not, I rejected that. I moved away from that. That's not my Judaism. My Judaism is a Judaism of action, which is why it's so exciting we have this Community Action Coalition that's been forming over the last couple of months. We had a meeting. Many people came to our meeting a few weeks ago where we started sharing ideas. Now we turn the ideas into action. Action is absolutely essential. What do we do about these differing topics? And over the next few weeks, many weeks actually, you'll see that there are different topics that we address after the Shabbat Shacharit service. So tomorrow we have two topics. At 11:30, we're going to be looking at anti-Semitism. And after that, about 45 minutes later, we're going to be looking at criminal justice reform. What are we as a community, what are we going to do? We've heard the ideas, now how do we implement them? Because study is not the primary thing, but action. This is the chance for you to come and join us, hear the ideas and say, yes, we want the community to do this, and we'll help by offering to do this. Anti-Semitism, as you know, has seen a massive increase over the last decade, actually, in particular. What are we as a community going to do to combat anti-Semitism? And what are we going to do to support our members during a time of increased anti-Semitism? And similarly, when it comes to criminal justice reform, there are some horrifying things that happen in this state and around the country, but we're particularly focusing on this state in terms of incarceration. We need to address it. This is, after all, Pesach, and it's a time of liberation. And that's not saying that everyone who is imprisoned should be released. Of course not. But it has to be compassionate. It has to help bring people back into society. And it has to be kind. It has to be good where appropriate, of course. So, please join us, not just for our Kabbalat Shabbat service this evening, not just for Torah study. Do Women Count? It's a bit of a cheeky title. I was rather pleased with myself, to be honest, because this is looking at various sources over the years about should women count the Omer. And embedded in that is actually the underlying question of do women count? And there's some really interesting, surprising sources, actually, especially right at the end of my handout. So I really hope you'll join us for that, either in person or online. And then join us for our Community Action Coalition meetings after the Shabbat Shacharit service for anti-Semitism and for criminal justice reform. As we, our community, start putting things into action, we would love to hear you help us to form that plan. We need you. Join us, bring lunch, and together we will make sure that we study, we pray, we socialize, but particularly we act. I wish you Shabbat Shalom, and I hope to see you soon.